That's fine. Okay, let's get this set up. Yeah, do more. Yeah, thanks. It's a little loose. Oh. That's fine. Thank you. Thank you very much. But okay, what time? No, I'll be okay. With air conditioning, I'll still get all schwitzed out. It's the way it works when I teach. What can I say? Okay, it is recording. Good. Okay. Boker Tov to everyone here, to everyone online. When we start in a moment, we're going to be beginning with Perek Bet, the Midah of Zehirut. You can tell me what page it is, and I know there's multiple copies here, but it's easy to find, I would hope, Perek Bet. Today's learning, as always, is Le'ilui Nishmat Abraham ben Meir Tzvi Rachel Leah. In addition, today also we're learning for Refuah Shlema for Reuven ben Mina, Malka bat Sarah, Mindel Reisel bat Tzviah. All have Refuah Shlema. Tov. So after the introduction and after the explanation that the Ramchal gave us for what our mission here, our mission is in this world, he's now going to start breaking it down. If you remember, he quotes the Braita of what's known as Reb Pinchas ben Yair. Reb Pinchas ben Yair, quoted in a few places in the Talmud, mentions how this action brings to this action, which brings to that action, which also ultimately brings one to Ruach HaKodesh and other things. Right now, we're going to stay in this world. We're not going to talk about Ruach HaKodesh. We're not going to talk about anything very high that's out of anyone's grasp. Everything he's going to talk about, at least in the first 11 chapters, is within everyone's reach. Some more so, some less. As an example, let's assume for a moment, just as a metaphor, you have someone like my height who's trying to reach an apple on a tree. I have no stool, no ladder, no anything, so I can reach only a certain amount. But other people will be taller than I am, will be able to reach a little bit higher. Now, what if I wanted to get to a higher point? I don't have a ladder. Maybe the other person can help me up. So we all can reach a certain level, and sometimes with the help of others, we can even reach higher. That's the general metaphor of I would say, for this book. So we're going to start up with, it says, Be'or midat ha-zehirut. The zehirut is translated into English as either watchfulness or vigilance. What does it mean to, let's just take a moment to define, even in English. What does it mean to be vigilant? What would you say? Watchful, good. Watchful, what else? Careful, okay. So if I'm walking down the street and I'm careful not to trip on the dips in the sidewalk, that's being vigilant, good.
9:02, I'm late.
It's okay. Oh, I should, hold on one second, I'm sorry. Do this, and yes, okay. Heightened awareness, that's another word I was looking for, is awareness, very good. We're gonna see that in here. Okay, so let's take a look. Hine inyana zehirut hu, she'yeh adam nizhar b'ma'asav u'v'inyanav. A person needs to be careful of, aware of, watchful of, vigilant of his actions, the various things he goes through in life. Klomar, mitbonen umfakeach al ma'asav u'drachav hatovim hem imlo. We need to always be questioning ourselves. Now, we do this very often without even realizing it. If I were to ask you to throw out a number, how many times a day you make a decision? Some of you may say 10, 12. You're probably making hundreds of decisions a day. Seriously, you open a drawer for a fork. When you pulled out that fork, that was a decision to open the drawer, it was a decision to take out a fork. We don't realize and we don't think in terms of decisions like that, but it's a decision. We're more thinking of, like, should I go to the Makolet or should I go to Rami Levy? Should I go at 4 in the afternoon or should I go at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? Those are decisions, okay? But here he's talking about deciding if what we're doing is right or wrong, good or bad. Is it promoting our agenda for what we're supposed to be doing? We should not allow ourselves to be left to our body, our being, to the danger of being lost. And we should not just go along and plodding along in life, our merry way, and the way we're used to it, like a blind person in the dark. There's two things I'd like to address in that sentence. Number one, what does it mean, hergel? What does it mean? Hergel in English also could be a habit. A person bites their nails, whatever that might be, those are habits. It's hergel. So a person lehitragel to something, a person who gets used to something. So for example, I'm sure this has happened to other people, not just me. You're in the middle of Shemona Esrei, and halacha deals with this, by the way. Or you're in the middle of Shema and say, wait, where was I? Right? I know I'm not the only one that happens to. Right? Now the halacha talks about what are you supposed to do in those two situations, just as a parenthetical statement. You're in the middle of Shema. This helps you only if you're in shul, by the way, the way that this particular halacha is, that if you are in the middle of Shema, you don't remember if you're the second paragraph or the third paragraph, the first paragraph or the second paragraph. So you kind of listen to where people are. You can hear, okay? And then you can figure out, like, wait, there's no way I'm near the end of the second paragraph if everyone's still in Be'ahavta. Remember, it's not Be'ahavta, Be'ahavta. When it comes to Shemona Esrei, you actually are supposed to go back to the bracha you for sure said already, and you pick it up after that. So if you're middle, I know I said Slach Lanu, but I don't know if I got to Lamal Shirim. I don't know. So you go back to the Slach Lanu, which you've already said, and go to the next one first and continue from there. But our brains are on autopilot. So he's saying we have to break the very first thing he's telling us, we have to break the autopilot in life. And we don't want to be ki'iver ba'afela, which is a very strange use of words. Why? We said we don't want to be like a blind person in the dark. Now, the simple meaning is we don't want to be walking in the dark like a blind person, but that's not what he says. Ki'iver ba'afela, like a blind person in the dark. Well, it doesn't make a difference if it's bright and sunny, middle of the day, or it's pitch dark outside. The blind person, unfortunately, is blind. He cannot see. So what does that mean? Ki'iver ba'afela. Anyone want to suggest an impossible thing? Yeah.
Person can perceive that there's light,
okay,
and they don't have perhaps full sight, but they have other senses.
Okay, so because there are other senses, they have perceptions of other things, and they can perceive light and the warmth, maybe of the sun, of course. So maybe that. Okay, I want to go a little step further even. But yes.
I think the usual explanation is that in the sunlight, others can see the blind.
Very good. Very good. Correct. So it's actually based on Parshat Ki Tavo, where it talks about the blind walking in the daylight, but it doesn't make a difference to them in the daylight because there at least someone can help them. So let me explain what we're talking about here. Ki'iver ba'afela means two parts. You don't want to be like a blind person walking around with no assistance and can't see where you're going. But if it's in the dark, if you're wandering around as the blind, God forbid you, I'm saying a person's wandering around as the blind individual, if it's pitch dark outside, there's no one else can see you to help you. So on the one hand, you have to be careful not to be stuck in a rut of what you're doing. And on the other hand, it also has to be open to the fact that other people can then see you, hopefully, and help you when it's needed. This book can be considered that help as well, by the way, not just yourself and your spouse or your friends. He says, even our common sense requires this of us. I want to read something to you. For those of you who come to or attend my Kuzari class, you know that I teach along with my dear friend Rosh Shlomo Aviner. It's not my dear friend, but I'm saying it's his Perush. I also have his book that I used over the last few years, Messilat Yesharim. I'm just going to quote once in a while a couple things he said. I want to just read to you two sentences. Haziruti sug shel hitbonenut. Vigilance is the form of self-introspection. Shel mudaut pnimit. Internal self-awareness. You have to learn the book many times. It's not yedi'ah, but it's muda'ut. Same shoresh. What is it saying? There's a difference between knowing something and being aware of something. I know right now it's hot outside. I know. That's why we're inside. I know it's sunny. I know it's daytime. I could close all the trees in here, and I'd still know. How would I know it's daytime? I could look at my watch, if I'm not wearing. I can see through the slats a little bit of the light, but that's knowledge. I know it. But to be aware of it, the heat of the sun, I stand in the sun for too long a period of time, I'm aware of that. When you are walking down the street, you're not necessarily thinking about, oh, who's walking behind me, who's walking next to me. But if you're walking in a bad area, and especially if it's nighttime, you are hopefully hyper aware of where you are. So the difference between knowledge and awareness and really putting that inside of you. And that's what we have to do. He's take a look next. V'lidroach me'avadon nishmato. We have been given in our nature, we have given the fight. It's hard to say, fight or flight nature. We are aware of danger. We know there's danger around us, and we are also internally have this nature that will run away from something dangerous. How is it possible to say that you're willing to close off your eyes and your mind to what will save you? Someone's, God forbid, running at you with a gun, pointing at you. You go, well, oh, that's right, I forgot I had to go buy milk tomorrow. No, that's not what you're going to be thinking. Like, how am I going to save myself? And he's saying, the gun is pointed at you. Your Yetzer Hara is pointing this gun at you. How are you not going to learn how to deal with that? How can it be any, I'm going to use my own words, how can it be a person be so foolish? Is there anything more foolish than that, not trying to save yourself? And a person who ignores their need to prepare themselves and to protect themselves is worse than an animal. Because they have their own ingrained nature where they protect themselves. Okay, I don't believe that if a lion's coming after a jackal, that the jackal is going to go, oh man, I'm tired, I think I'm just going to rest for a few minutes. He knows he's going to run away. They know to run away from anything that could cause tremendous amount of damage to them. Now I see here, let me think, very few, only a couple wearing glasses. Okay, how many of you need glasses to drive? Okay, good, myself included. So imagine getting in your car and taking your glasses off and driving. Think about that. That's what he's saying. Really, unless you really don't need, you just put them on because you have a little bit. Most people who wear glasses and need them to drive, they need them to drive. If I take my glasses off, it's very dangerous for me to drive, obviously. So if you take your glasses off, he says that's not, and he doesn't say about driving, obviously, in the 1700s, but there's no difference in a sense that you decide to willfully take your glasses off and drive without your glasses because you're in danger and you're endangering yourself. Put them on. A person who goes to this world without the introspection, the need to look into themselves, the need to ask questions, I'm going to come back to that. If a person doesn't ask about himself, the actions he or she are about to do are good or bad, he's like a blind individual walking at the river's edge. Asher sakanato vadai atzuma. For sure, he's in extreme danger, and the bad thing is more possible than him being saved. What is he saying? A person who doesn't take the time to think, I'm going to go and do X. Now, obviously, it takes a tremendous amount of self-control and awareness to do this for everything. Now, again, I want to tell you, like I said before we started the book, this is not a recipe that you have to mix all these ingredients to get anything at the end. You're going to need to pick and choose how you're going to do this. But to completely ignore good and bad, what's good for you, what's not good for you, is the biggest mistake you can make. But when you start having an awareness throughout your day of, is this good for the Jews or not, meaning your own Jew and the Jewish people, if you don't do that at all, he says it's no different than a person who is blind, once again, using that metaphor, walking at the edge of the river. He said that he's for sure going to fall in. And for sure going to be problems, and for sure danger. There's a halachic concept that is Adam mu'ad le'olam. Some of you are aware of this already. I'll explain to you what this means. Let's go back a little bit before we get to that concept and talk about it in terms of animals. The Gemara in many places, especially in Bava Kama, discusses the idea of what happens when one animal damages another animal, an animal damages a human damages an animal. So there are two levels of financial responsibility. Let's assume from now, the reason that the Gemara deals with an ox, that was what was available. For today, the similar rules, by the way, apply in car accidents and other things, very similar, by the way. It's interesting. But let's say you, for example, you had an ox, and your ox gored your neighbor's animal. So the first time that happens, he pays chatzi nezek, he pays only 50% of the damage, and he's called a tam. a simple, this quote doesn't mean simple, but it's a simple animal. He only damaged once, and therefore he only pays 50% of the damage. If he does it a second time, he only pays 50%. The third time, he's called a mu'ad. He is already has a pattern and already is assumed he's going to do damage. And now from this point on, including that third time, he pays full damages to the animal or the field or whatever it is he damaged. So there's a gradation, there's steps, 1, 2, and then 3 is when the ball falls and then he has to pay full damage. However, a human being is Adam Mu'ad Le'olam. A person is always assumed that they're going to do damage. Now, what does that mean? Doesn't mean that I'm going to walk out of here before I walk out, I'm going to take the tree, so I'm going to break it. That's not what it means. But it means that human beings, we are not necessarily aware of what we do all the time, even less so sometimes than the animal, it seems, and that we will somehow do damage, and when we do, we have to pay full price. And give you even when we're asleep, what does that mean? If I'm a guest in someone's home, and when I went to sleep, there was a lamp on the table already next to me. Not that it was put there after I went to sleep. And I turned over my sleep and I accidentally knocked it over. Hence the word accident. I'm still responsible to pay full damage. If I trip and I punch someone by accident, I have to pay them. If I do it on purpose, even more so, and there's more things I have to pay for. So we are human. You know, you ever hear the expression, we're just humans? Well, that's the problem also. It's a good thing, it's a bad thing. The bad thing is that because we are human, we will make mistakes. And if we don't try to protect ourselves from ourselves, we'll make even more mistakes. Next paragraph. No, it's the same paragraph, right? Ki ulam chesron, sorry, it's the end of that first paragraph. Ki ulam chesron hashmira mipnei ha'yivaron ha'tivi. O mipnei ha'yivaron ha'retzoni, dahainu stimat ha'einayim, bebechira v'chefetz echadu. He says, whether a person is blind naturally, or has chosen to be blind, in this metaphor, meaning we choose to close our eyes to what we need to do, it's the same thing. Now, as he's saying, don't think it's some crazy metaphor I'm giving you, oh, it's like a blind person. It says you are choosing the blindness when you don't act on it. When I was in the shul in Chicago, the very first week I became rabbi, I decided to try something. I was going to do it for a couple of weeks. I put on the bulletin board every week for the first couple of weeks something called the halacha tip. Things I thought maybe people might know, people might not know, just one page, nothing grand, no big deal. Remember, the very first one was that when you're finishing Shemona Esrei, you look behind you and make sure no one behind you is saying Shemona Esrei immediately behind you, because if they are, you can't step back. If you didn't know that, now you do. You have to wait for the person immediately behind you to finish Shemona Esrei. What if there's benches? I'm not going to get into that now. So I put that up. People liked it, and I kept doing it. I did it for 550 weeks in a row. And I made like booklets every year and gave them out to the shul. But why am I mentioning that? Because people got used to that being on the bulletin board. And I would see, I love this. People would sometimes stand there and read it and explain and talk to each other about it. And some would go say the topic, I don't want to know. And exactly like that. I don't want to know. Okay, your choice. Talk to him about it, not me. Right? But people do. We whether we realize it or not, we often deal with a la carte Judaism. I'll take something from column A. I don't want column B. I'll take column C because I like that. We make judgment calls about mitzvot. This one's more important. This is less important. But we can't make such judgments. We know that. So he's going to discuss that later in the book. Next paragraph. Yes.
About the a la carte Judaism.
Yes.
Don't you think, I just think there's such a negative perception of that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think that another way to look at it is some people are just engaging with halacha?
Okay.
And coming from an authentic place,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a living thing and it has influence.
Okay, so first let me repeat this so it's also on the video. The question was, is it maybe look at a la carte Judaism as maybe something even positive because it's people engaging with halacha, and maybe I'm going to add to your words. Maybe it's their best way, the best way they can do it. Maybe.
No, I'm saying that they're applying it to their life in a real way. They're engaging with it as in a relationship with halacha because it's alive. So there's an ebb and flow, just like in any living relationship.
Okay, so like there'll be an ebb and flow in every relationship. You have the relationship with halacha. So let me change the perspective for a second. I'm driving from Ma'ale Adumim to Yerushalayim, and I'm weaving, and I go through red lights. I like certain rules. I stay in my lane, when I want to. But when I don't want, I'm going to go out of my lane. And I don't need to go through red. I can go through red lights. It's okay. I'm careful when I go through the red light. In other words, I understand what you're saying. And if someone's going to say to me, I'm not going to do anything, or I'm going to do what I want to do of the halacha, I'm going to tell them to do, like people have asked me, oh, benching is so long. It's the first year I ever gave them my Ledumim. Benching is so long. I said, fine, so don't bench, just say the first paragraph. I can do that. Well, it's better than not benching, of course. So in other words, both perspectives are right. The perspective of, look, a person who knows and should be doing things, they should be doing things instead of just trying to cut corners. But a person who's growing and learning and trying to improve, then yeah, decide there can be, I don't want to say value, but I'm going to use the word value given to certain actions, and I'll choose certain things, but as long as it's on a process of growth and not retreat. That's how I would look at it. Okay, very good. Sure. Now, we know that right now, including this Shabbat, Yirmiyahu is the Navi of the time, right? We're going to switch into Yeshayahu, but these last 2 weeks and this week of Yirmiyahu is our prophet of doom. Lived in our backyard here in Anatot, seen the Beit HaMikdash go up in flames from the distance, and also had his scribe write Megillat Eicha. So we're going to quote Yirmiyahu. Yirmiyahu had a very difficult life. This isn't the Shir Navi, but I'll just tell you, he had a very difficult life. The Jews did not want to be told what to do. Nothing's changed in thousands of years. And they also didn't like their rabbis. Nothing's changed in thousands of years. And they threw him in prison. Well, some of the rabbis have been thrown in prison over the years, but not necessary for that. Yirmiyahu would complain, would wail about the evils of his generation. They had a nega. They had almost a disease with this midah, this character trait. That they would close their eyes up, they would ignore their actions, without paying attention to what they were doing. Whether to do the action they're going to do or to drop it, to not do it. Meaning they were not just unaware, but almost in a proactive way. They couldn't care less. They did what made them feel good, right? I want to keep Shabbat. And for me, Shabbat means going to the movies, going out with my friends on Friday night to the beach. But it makes me feel good. And I'm resting. And that's not what he said in Yirmiyahu, obviously. V'amar alehem. And Yirmiyahu said about these individuals, I'm going to read the whole pasuk and I'll give a general explanation. Einish nicham al ra'ato lemor, kulo shav mimirutzatam kesus shotef b'milchama. The second half of the pasuk is the part we need to deal with, is like all the horses that are running headlong into battle. When a horseman is on a horse and he's running into a battle, do you think that horse is saying, oh man, this isn't going to look good. We're in trouble here. We better turn around, right? It's not like Mr. Ed. Right? He's not going to, no, a few of you understood that one at least. So the horse just goes. It goes headlong into, without even thinking it's going into danger. And he's saying that these people were acting like these horses. Why is he always, throughout the book, he uses the metaphor of milchama? Why? We will read it in a few weeks. Parashat Ki Tetzei, Ki Tetzei milchama al oyevecha. Will be when you go out in war against your enemies, and it talks about various things about war. Rashi says, Lo dibra Torah ele keneged yetzer hara, that the Torah is referring in this case to the battle between you and your yetzer hara. It is a war. It really is a battle. And if you don't feel that there's a battle in your life with the yetzer hara, you need to step up your game a little bit. Again, that's the theme of the book, to be aware of the fact that you're going to see something from Rav Aviner in a minute about the yetzer hara, which I think is actually quite interesting.
Right.
Yes.
If the horse didn't have a rider, someone leading it into battle,
Right.
into the fire, would he go into harm's way?
No, correct.
So he has to have a leader. He has to have somebody pulling the reins.
Right.
Right. Because an animal does not go into
Correct.
harm's way.
Because of the exact same thing we just said before, which you're right. The animal recognizes the danger. Correct. So what's the rider in this metaphor? Potentially the yetzer hara. Right? The yetzer hara is taking that animal straight in without even, there's no paying attention. But the other part of that perspective of that metaphor is we are the horse, going headlong without even thinking about it. Okay, so we got the yetzer hara, the rider, the driver. We got us just just going without paying any attention and with the blinders. Thank you. V'hainu. This means to say, shayu v'holchim b'mirutzat hergelam. They would go and they would run in the habit they had gotten used to, v'darchehem, in their ways, mibli shianichu zman le'atzmam, without leaving themselves any time, v'dakdek al ha'ma'asim v'hadarachim, without leaving any time to investigate and to think about their actions and their ways. V'nimtza she'em noflim b'ra'a b'li ra'ot otah. They fell into evil, into bad things, without even seeing it coming. You might think that Yirmiyahu was talking about, okay, his time period, it was really bad. We know it's just before the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, first Beit HaMikdash, Yirmiyahu. And okay, that was then. This is now. In a few weeks, not that long away, and I do want to scare you a little, it's going to, not Pesach, it's going to be Yom Kippur. And in Nusach Ashkenaz, the list of the Al-Chetz, we didn't just go to do the Avera. We ran. We couldn't wait to do the Avera. I get this great blush and I can't wait to tell somebody, whatever it might be. But it's not just in the time of Yirmiyahu. If we have to be honest, by the way, this is one of the hardest things in this entire book, is to be honest with yourself. To look in the mirror, metaphorically or literally. And we have in our building, we have all these buildings that are elevators. And they all have a big mirror. And I don't know, I always look in the mirror when I get in the elevator. It's not to look, was my hair okay? Right? I look. And I don't mean it to say I'm looking at myself, I'm introspection, please. No, I don't do that. Maybe once in a while. But it means to take a hard, long look at ourselves and say, are we doing the right thing? But what we've done instead is he's saying is we've chosen blindness. In Shmona Esrei, after the opening 3 brachot, which are the same thing for every Shmona Esrei the entire year, with additions here and there, we have the very first bracha on the weekday Shmona Esrei, Ata chonen l'adam da'at umlamed le'enosh bina. Chonen meitcha chochma b'dam, etc. The very first bracha, we acknowledge that Hashem is the one who gives us this da'at. And what's the purpose of this knowledge? We are being given the idea of wisdom, knowledge, intellect. We cannot say, I don't have the ability to do that. I can't have chin, I can't make this distinction. Why do we make Havdalah and Shmona Esrei in the first bracha? For multiple reasons besides certain halachic ones, but because of the fact that this is the bracha when we say Hamavdil ben Kosh L'Chol Ben L'Chosh Ben Yisrael Amim, etc., that we make these havchanot, we make these distinctions. Hashem has given us this ability. We can do that. So don't say we can't. I'm not saying to you. He's saying don't say you can't do this. He says this is actually one of the tricks used by the Yetzer Hara. להכביד עבודתו בתמידות על ליבות בני אדם, עד שלא יישאר להם רווח להתבונן ולהסתכל באיזה דרך הם הולכים. This is so true for so many people. What does the Yetzer Hara tend to do for us? I am so busy. I have so much to do. Look at my calendar. Oh my gosh, I have this meeting and I have to go pick up the kids and I have to bring to this and I have to go pick up this. I have to go to the store after them. Before you know it, the day is over. When am I going to have time to sit down and think about myself? He says, that's the Yetzer Hara. I don't think there was a person, a quote, normal person, I'll explain what I mean in a minute, who can say honestly, I do not have 5 minutes a day to think about my life. Matter of fact, I think that would be, you're fooling yourself to the nth degree. Now, why do I say normal? A few months ago, I watched a documentary that was made on Rav Elyashiv Zatzal. Rav Elyashiv had in his greater family, evidently, basically, it seemed from the video like everyone in his family is religious. He had one relative who was not religious, and he wanted to have access to Rav Elyashiv, the family, and just make a documentary. And they granted him access. It was amazing. It's like an hour long. Amazing, amazing, amazing video. Just to see this Gadol B'Torah and his actions and how they interacted with this irreligious relative, and it was beautiful to see. So in the middle of the video, Rav Elyashiv was asked, do you consider Hesech Hada'at? So first of all, what's Hesech Hada'at? It means being distracted for a moment. So for example, let's say a person, say a guy's wearing tefillin, and then he's going to go, has to go to the bathroom. So when he comes back, there's a break, it's a hefsek, and there's a hefsek gadat. You're not supposed to be thinking about tefillin in the bathroom. So now you have to put on tefillin, you have to make a bracha again. Not true by the talit, by the way. So that's a hefsek gadat. What if a person's learning, right? A person is doing something, maybe you go for 20 minutes somewhere, you come back. So he kept asking Rabbi Yashiv, what do you consider Hesach Hadat? And he didn't respond. So finally he responded like this. This is a Hesach Hadat. He looks at his book, he goes like this, he looks back. That is Hesach Hadat to him. Okay, now that's scary, the way his mind works. Forget all the politics and how you feel about person's opinions and halacha and everything else. Take a look at Rav Kanievsky, okay? Rav Kanievsky's day starts at 2 a.m. His Rebbetzin Alel Shalom used to get up and make tea for him every day at 2. Until the one time she was sleeping in a few minutes and he didn't want to wake her, and he tried to make it. He put the kettle on and it overflowed and was whistling and his Rebbetzin heard and came running out. That was the first and last time he tried to make tea, because he was into his learning. He wasn't even thinking, he couldn't hear anything else. He learns in a year. Not over the course of years, a year. All Talmud Yerushalmi, all Talmud Bavli, the entire Shulchan Aruch, the entire Torah, the entire Rambam, and just list like 8 or 9 things in a year. People can learn lifetime and not even scratch that surface. Okay, again, you talk about a certain kind of a mind, a certain type of neshama, and they're predisposed to that. You and I, in the real world, at least me, we can't necessarily, people have tried that. They even said in the video about Rav Yashiv, people tried to emulate him for 1 week. How he was like, he could have 50 people around the table and trying to talk to him. He doesn't even pay attention, doesn't hear anything. He's so engrossed in what he's doing. People have tried that. And they tried the Rav Kanievsky getting up at 2 in the morning and learning till the middle of the next night and going to sleep for a couple hours. We're not like that. We're in the real world. But in our real world, where there are pressures and there are things we have to do, and we have places to go, and we have to do shopping, we have to go, and we have to make a parnasa, not one person sitting here can legitimately say, I don't have a few minutes a day. Me, ki yodea, because we knows the Yetzer Hara. She'ilulei hayu samim libam kimat kat al darchehem, because the Yetzer Hara knows that if they would just pay just a little bit of attention to their actions, vadai shemiyad hayu matchilin lehinachem al ma'asehem. He knows, the Yetzer Hara, that if they would start paying a little bit of attention, they would feel bad about what they've been doing. And this charata, this bad feeling, would get stronger. That they would give up the sin. Well, that would put the Yetzer Hara out of business. The Yetzer Hara is to be in business full time. I forgot which Rebbe said this. It may have been one of the Lubavitcher Rebbes. I honestly don't remember. That it was one of the Rebbes who was put in prison at some point and said that the Yetzer Hara is just stupid. Why is the Yetzer Hara stupid? Because he said when he was in prison, the Yetzer Hara came too. He had a Yetzer Hara in prison too. He says, what does the Yetzer Hara need to be in prison for? He chose to come to prison with me. I say the Yetzer Hara is stupid for different reasons. We blow the shofar, right, during the month of Elul, coming up, Ezrat Hashem soon. We blow the shofar for the whole month until the day before Rosh Hashanah, and make it hebdel, a distinction between the tkiyot that we do because we want to get used to it and to wake us up, and the ones that we have to do on Rosh Hashanah. And then we blow the shofar, and we do it all kinds of ways. We do a shrine, and we say it's to levalbel et Satan, to confuse the Satan. Don't you think that after a few thousand years, the Satan's caught on that we're doing certain things to mess with him? Right? It's just, when we realize how feeble the Satan is, how feeble the Yetzer Hara really is, we would be ashamed of ourselves. And that's the purpose of this book, is not shame, by the way. There's a Gemara that tells us that in the time of Mashiach, that Hashem is going to take the Yetzer Hara and shecht it in front of everybody. The tzaddikim are going to see this massive, massive Yetzer Hara that was there. They said, this is what I was able to overcome. Baruch Hashem, unbelievable. And the Yesharim are going to say, they're going to see this puny little nothing. And they said, this is what I couldn't overcome. It's our perspective. We have to realize that Yetzer Hara is there, but it's as small as we can make it. It's up to us. This is the similar idea. Getting someone focused on something else and not what they should be doing was the idea of Paro. He said, make their work even stronger and heavier. It wasn't enough that he wouldn't just leave them enough time to think about what was going on and potentially take care of themselves and maybe rebel. He said, I needed to fill their day as much as possible between the time they wake up and the time they go to sleep. They didn't have time to think about rebelling. They didn't have time to think about their situation. Focus on work only. So too is the Yetzer Hara's job when it comes to humans. This Yetzer Hara is a man of war, and it is very well versed in the tactics of war. And it's impossible to escape the Yetzer Hara only with great wisdom and an outlook, a proper outlook. This is what the Navi, and he's going to list a few, scream and say, pay attention. Would anyone here, again, even with your glasses on, would you close your eyes when you drive? Would you just drive? There's no street lights, there's no headlights, no anything. You just drive. You close your eyes in the daytime or nighttime with the. That's what we do. It's exactly what we do when we go through life and we don't think about our actions. And that's what he's saying from the Navi. Shlomo said in his wisdom in Mishlei, Al titen sheina le'einecha utnuma le'afapecha hinatzel kitzvi miyad. He talks about there in the pasuk about don't doze off in a metaphorical sense. Be vigilant. The person who pays attention to his paths in this world is zocheh to Yeshua from Hashem in the next. Now, because of those couple of words, zocheh v'ro'eh, I want to close the book and we'll just say something that has nothing to do with Messilat Yesharim for 5 minutes, because it has to do with the time we're in. We are, barring any last-minute visit from Melech HaMashiach, unfortunately, Sunday, once again, we're going to be commemorating Tisha B'Av. It says in the Gemara, it says in many, many places, Kol mitabela Yerushalayim, whoever mourns for Jerusalem, Zocheh v'ro'eh b'simchata, will see its joy, or it merits seeing the joy, or bevinyana, or it says Zocheh, to see it rebuilt. But that I quoted and translated it differently. It says Zocheh v'ro'eh, just like the words he used now. He is meriting and he is seeing the joy of Jerusalem. It should say the future. Yizke v'yir'eh. He will merit. He will see in the future the joy. When Yaakov Avinu was told, so the question is, why does it say it like that? So Yaakov Avinu was told by his sons that Yosef evidently is dead. They show him the coat, right, of many colors. It's got blood. And Achtarof Toraf, he's been mauled to death. And it says, it says that the Yaakov Avinu was manamil hitnachem. He couldn't be consoled. He was inconsolable. He couldn't be consoled. And Rashi said, why couldn't he be consoled? He says, ki en hachai nit, a person who, let me get the right words. You cannot be consoled for someone who's really alive. What does that mean? In Yaakov's mind, he couldn't be dead. He had to be alive. He couldn't be consoled because of that. He couldn't accept that this had happened. And therefore, he couldn't be consoled. A person who looks at Yerushalayim, and so to him in his mind, he's alive. A person who mourns the city of Yerushalayim, but it's got this feeling, there is first of all, I can already see Binyan Beit HaMikdash. I can already feel it. It's alive to me. It's not gone. Zocheh v'ro'eh, already in the present tense, is the zechut of seeing this moment of Binyan Beit HaMikdash. We have a tremendous amount of power that we don't realize. And that power is what the Gemara tells us, that every generation, I just quoted this in a couple other places, every generation in which the Beit HaMikdash is not rebuilt It's as if it were destroyed in that generation. How's the Gemara tells us? Like, how can it say that? Are we physically going out of our way to destroy it, to make sure the Beit HaMikdash is not being built? The answer is yes, we really are. Well, it's the sinat chinam and how we talk about each other and how we talk to each other and how we relate to each other. That was the destruction of the second Beit HaMikdash. Are we doing Gilui Arayot, Shvichot Damin, and Avodah Zarah, the big three from the first Beit HaMikdash? I would hope not. But the second one is so simple. Sinat chinam. And it's our downfall. Just open up the paper, open up the internet, just take a look. So we have these two extremes. On the one hand, it's our fault if we don't have a Beit HaMikdash by Sunday. On the other hand, when we mourn properly, we think about it, but we really can picture in our mind's eye the rebuilding of the Beit HaMikdash, we help bring about that reality. The mind is a very powerful tool. Hopefully, here's my deal, my promise, not an assurance, my promise. Bezrat Hashem, if we don't have to fast on Sunday, I'm going to have an extra shiur this coming week on Sunday, but in Yerushalayim. Okay, I promise you. Okay, and everyone better bring meat and wine. That's your part of the deal. Have a good day.
Thank you.